In this part of the webinar, we turn to the role of patient groups. Can you tell us a little bit about the role the Vasculitis Foundation plays in supporting patients, please?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. The Vasculitis Foundation is dedicated to helping patients with vasculitis receive an earlier diagnosis, improving access to expert medical care, and providing the educational resources that patients need to help them better manage the disease. It's a chronic illness. It's not going away, so how do we manage it? Education and support are the heart and soul of our organization. Since February 2020, with the pandemic, we've had to switch our resources to deliver more online information. We've revamped our website and increased our digital presence just to keep pace with the new and changing ways of how people learn. I think that's been one of our biggest challenges, meeting people where they need to be to learn. All of our in-person conferences switched to virtual learning sessions. Our Road to Wellness webinars, which we host each month, they feature medical experts sharing their knowledge so patients can learn what they need to manage not only the disease, but all the side effects that often come along with the disease, what's caused by the disease, what's caused by the medications. And many of our topics are direct requests from our patients or questions that they've submitted to us. We also launched weekly and monthly online support groups to address the patient's mental health issues. We saw a huge decline in mental health wellness during the pandemic with, as Glenn mentioned, the isolation, staying home, not interacting with their family and friends. So our support groups are to bring people together to talk about, just to be together, even if it's online virtually. And we've seen people, it's really been helpful to them. We also, in 2019, we helped launch the American College of Rheumatology treatment guidelines for 6 forms of vasculitis, including EGPA, MPA, and GPA. These recommendations provide guidance regarding the evaluation and management of patients, including diagnostic strategies and the use of drugs and surgical interventions. We are hopeful that these guidelines will help more local physicians like Glenn's physicians, the community of physicians, rheumatologists, better understand how they can diagnose and treat the disease, because not everyone can get to a vasculitis center of excellence. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine, Joyce, carry on.
Oh, I was just going to mention our last initiative, which we launched this year, is our Victory Over Vasculitis initiative, which is a campaign led by patient ambassadors who their whole goal is to help patients have hope and set goals for themselves of what could their own victory over vasculitis look like. The program has 3 components: a physical component, a mental health, and also self-advocacy. And the physical component is not everybody running a marathon. It may be going to the grocery store by yourself and getting groceries. But we're trying to meet patients where they are and help them have hope so that in the old days, years and years ago, vasculitis was a death sentence, but it isn't now. So we need to help patients have hope.
Great, thank you. Does the Vasculitis Foundation play a role in research or patient engagement activities? And how important would you say that work is?
So we do participate in research. We fund research, but we also engage and encourage patients to participate in research, anything from focus groups to clinical trials. If our patients don't participate in research, it's not going to get done. We're never going to get the answers that we need to the questions we all have. The VF, we also fund small pilot study grants of 1 or 2 year lengths to study interesting ideas. And our VF research program has evolved over the past 20 years. We've funded over $3 million in research with 53 studies worldwide. But now we are focusing on encouraging younger physicians, scientists to they come to us, we provide grants where they can study novel ideas. And our goal is to bring them into the field of vasculitis to help them get established as independent researchers outside of their mentor's field. It's so hard to become an investigator, to be a scientist in the field of vasculitis with the limited funding. We also fund fellowships to train young physicians to come into the field of vasculitis. We fund 1 or 2 year fellowship grants to encourage them not just to learn clinical care, but also to explore the idea of doing research in vasculitis. And the goal behind the fellowship and the Young Investigator Program is to create more experts in vasculitis who can help our patients no matter where they live in the world. As Glenn said, he has to travel for expert care. We want to help create more physicians and scientists all over the world who can see our patients locally and not have them have to travel.
Those are some great initiatives. It's great to hear about VF's work in those areas. Is it challenging for patient organizations to raise disease awareness? And what would you say is your biggest limiting factor for achieving the goals of greater awareness?
I think the biggest goal or the biggest challenge is raising awareness of a rare disease that will probably never impact most people. So most people don't even know about vasculitis unless they are diagnosed with it themselves, or a family member, a friend, a neighbor, or coworker is diagnosed with the disease. So we don't have a national spokesperson. We don't have anybody famous with the disease. So we have to raise awareness, one person at a time, basically. We also have thought about, people are bombarded every day with everything that the news, the pop news. We know so much about some people's lives that we have no business knowing about. And, we seem to focus on really lighthearted matters as opposed to some of the serious things that really impact people's lives. So I think that's a huge challenge. Everything that that people are just approached with that, oh, did you know this? But when we think about gosh, why don't they know about vasculitis? It's such a critically important issue. We also, especially since the pandemic, about how people learn and how they engage with each other. We used to hand people brochures, and then we built a website, then social media. Now we have people who read journal articles, but we have other patients who watch 30-second TikTok videos. So finding the patients and meeting them where they are to help them learn about to learn about the disease and everything that they need to know to manage it effectively. I just find it fascinating how people engage and how they learn now. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity, but also a challenge.
Thank you, Joyce. Now, can you tell us about your vasculitis patients-powered research network?
Sure. The VPPRN was established in 2014, and the whole goal behind the VPPRN, it's a collaborative of patients, scientists, family members, clinicians, and advocates. But the whole goal behind it was to be patient-centered and to try to address the questions that patients actually have. So in the very early days, we put out surveys like, hey, what are patients most interested in? And then we designed studies around them. So some of the studies, all of the studies have 2 components. It asks a research question that patients are familiar or interested in. And it also includes patients in the process from study design through data collection, review, and even publication of the journal articles or however we present the information. So the patients are at the center, which in the old days, patients were never really considered that early on in the days. And I'm so happy that patients are involved in research now. The importance of study design can make or break a trial. So it's very exciting to see our patients becoming more and more engaged in research. So the VPPRN, some of the studies we've studied are quality of life. We did a survey on skin vasculitis because that's something that's really important to many of our patients. We did one on diagnostic, the length of time for diagnosis, which was shocking. And we did one in 2020, we launched a COVID-19 patient study, which was actually a collaboration with multiple autoimmune disease groups. And we compiled data for over a year about how patients are doing around the COVID-19. Did they get it? Did they not get it? How did they live? And that was just to engage our patients. Everybody lived COVID-19 for so long. It was really, addressing the questions that everybody had in real time was a very interesting process. And I feel like we learned a lot. And it also made patients feel empowered because they were trying to solve the questions. They weren't just sitting back in their bubbles in isolation. They were actually participating in research. And one final study I'll mention quickly is our VPREG study, which is our vasculitis patient registry for women who have vasculitis who become pregnant. We do not have enough information on how pregnancy affects vasculitis and how vasculitis affects pregnancy. So VPREG enrolls women who have vasculitis who become pregnant. We follow them through the 9 months of pregnancy, and we ask them questions about how they are doing. And the whole goal of VPREG is to learn more so that when women come to us and say, hey, is it okay should I get pregnant? Is it safe to get pregnant? We don't have to look at data from like lupus. We'll be able to look at data from vasculitis, and VPREG is an international study. It's very close to my heart because I think enabling women to have power to make decisions and be informed about if they want to have kids, yes, what do they need to do? So that's what the VPPRN is in a nutshell.
Oh, those are some wonderful initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, what an interesting, there's been a wealth of information there from different perspectives. Thank you to everyone. It was really interesting to hear firsthand from Glenn about the long journey he had with his diagnosis, and it seems as if that's not an uncommon situation in vasculitis. Clearly, there are gaps in care pathways and challenges there, and these create significant burden. As Glenn was pointing out, it's not just a case of those symptoms going away; they're there to different extents. I was particularly taken with what Glenn said about the smouldering symptoms and how they're persistently there. Just as Joyce was saying, and other people too. Dr. Wells, I think, touched on this too. Meeting patients where they are and trying to work out what their goals are seems to be really important. It's great, and it's great to hear how active VF you guys are in driving change and investing in the future, particularly with young researchers. That's all great. As I've said, if there are any questions that people would like to ask, we will get round to those via either through direct contact if we can, or we can address them perhaps in the article which will follow soon. Okay. Oh, and I must say, don't forget there is an opportunity to watch this webinar again on demand. So watch out for that. Many, many thanks to all our panelists today: Dr. Devuru Geetha, Glenn Massey, Joyce Coleman, Dr. Alvin Wells, Brian Tumanello, and to ChemoCentrix for partnering with us to bring this important discussion to you all today. And thank you to everybody watching.